What up? What up? What up? What up? What's happening? Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. And those who celebrated, those who don't. Sorry about your luck. Let's stick this whole thing over here. Bring the Facebook over here. No, stop making it full size. Facebook. It's not what I want, bro. Sounds like my computer's gonna blow up. That's never good. Go to the chat. Open the chat. Alright. Let's see. Let me look for clips. What did I name this? Here we go. I found it. Make sure it's right. Sorry, I want my kills, bro. I need them. Good boy, Chip. Did you eat your treat already? Yep, that is as ridiculous as it sounded. Download that. Download it. Open it. No, I don't need you to play it. What's up, Tara? What up? Welcome. Happy Thanksgiving. How was your giving of thanks? Oh, getting follows and likes. I like it. It's worth the $5. Like, no comments today. Okay. How was your Thanksgiving? Just put my social media post together. Just don't worry, I'll tag you in it so you can see it and like it and comment and do all the things that you do on the social medias. Oh, I need some Alka-Seltzer. Yeah. Need me some Alka-Seltzer. See, this is a very special day. Once a year, these two great events fall on one singular day. It is Thanksgiving and also Thick Boy Thursday. We're live now. So stop by and say hi. At all the stuff. Plus I gotta add an extra hashtag in here. Boop 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 boop. X Legends clips. Let's do it. It's shared. Now we're ready for some. Let's get down to business. I don't give a what you say. Who was this? Words don't make sense if you listen. There we go. Cool story, bro. Cool story, bro. Anybody? Anybody giving thanks for Apex tonight? Mr. Ingram, what's happening, buddy? What is going on? How's life? Life good, I hope. I hope. We're living the dream over here. I found a way to not have my girlfriend bitch at me for playing video games 4 nights a week. And I call it chasing my dreams. You know what I mean? I just realized I wasn't muted, so my teammates heard some weird conversation. But if I'm chasing my dreams and I'm trying to be a content creator / streamer / fake celebrity. Yo, what up, Ted? Happy Turkey Day, bud. Yeah, if I'm chasing my dreams, I mean, she says I can't. I mean, that's kind of fucked up. Fudged up. No more cursing. It's a new day. So I'm gonna give that up. You can go wherever you want. Forward. How was your Thanksgiving, Ted? Good, I hope. Yeah, what are we doing?
Heard that.
Hold your breath. If you have a respiratory system.
I thought the other dude left. Alright, cool. Alright, we got this. Can't complain. It was nice. Ate at the girlfriend's parents' house. Turkey was a bit dry, but other than that, it was nice. They were hashing out some family vacation plans, so looks like I get to go with them this year. So I'm kind of excited. Yeah, it was pretty sweet. We're going to the Finger Lakes is the plans. I've never been, so yay for me. Finally a vest. Let's put that on that one. Oh, I'll take it. Yeah, that's how you feel, bro? That's how you feel? Hope you don't go down, Deathstroke. Cause you on your own, bro.
Charge rifle here.
Shove it up your butt, buddy. I ain't got no time for that. For you and your charge rifle BS.
Up here. Turbocharger.
No. I don't know what I'm gonna switch to. Probably gonna drop this Evo. Oh, in your face, bruh. In your face.
1 minute before the ring closes. We have time.
Do we though? I don't know if we have time. I don't know how far we gotta go.
I need a barrel mod.
Do they open up when the train comes? That's kind of far. Yeah, I'm gonna do it.
Seconds left. Shotgun bolt here. Level 3.
Oh, message from Zero again. That'll be on like 15, maybe sooner. Alright, cool. Sounds good.
10 seconds. The ring is closed. There's a jump tower here.
Sounds good. Deathstroker is ruining everything.
The ring is moving for light fighters. No one is inside.
Why is he not flying? Why is he not doing what he's got to do here? Why is he... Oh, well, I guess we don't really gotta fly, and now my face is a bit red. Oh, this stuff's Lutetto.
Got a feeling someone's been here.
I guess I'll commit to it.
Got an extended energy Prowler SMG here. Heavy ammo here.
I hear some shooting people. Let's get involved. Let's get involved. Careful. Oh, Gibraltar mitt.
Let's go this way.
It's my first game all day, so I'm gonna be super rusty.
Sniper stock here. Level 3.
Hostile over there.
Thought I heard someone trying to grapple. They're gonna have high ground, and Deathstroke is buying a douche nozzle. Take that. Where you want to go forward? Where you want to go forward? I'm with you, bro. That's a bad out of 10.
Enemy spotted. Target over there. Throwing Arc Star. Throwing Arc Star.
Alright, I never saw them in there, so I have no idea.
We have the benefits. We are inside the ring.
New kill leader. Watch for them.
Oh, Arcstar.
Look out, grenade.
Arcstar.
Attention, there is a new kill leader.
Battle stabilizer here. Level 1.
New kill leader.
Yeah, why are you not tracking them, bro? Tell us where they're at. Tell us where they're at, man. Do your job, bro.
Contact with target.
Another Gibraltar mitt. I knew that was coming. I knew that. Mother. Ah, damn.
Trust in the All Father.
Damn. Did not go as planned. No good. What's up, buddy? What's up, chibbies? Why is there sound? There shall be no sound. Yeah, it wasn't the game's fault that I suck. I gotta check my challenges. They're right there on the screen, and I just don't ever read them. Change positions. Get a little bit more.
Experiences where you sit back and say, oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Hey, Chibbies, you want some music, Chibbies? Want some music, puppy? We can put the music on for you. I'll put the music on for you. Because I love you, puppy. So we'll put the music on for you.
Remember me, friends. I may kill you.
I don't have Spotify Premium, so there will be commercials. But it is what it is.
You won't be the only person I beat today.
Just gotta go over there.
Get ready. I'm coming for you, friend. Maybe we land here. Or maybe we don't.
Do some Mercules. It's a bit loud.
How about this way?
Going to Skyhook. And then hit the mean rotation out of it. Oh, and there's Grim Crypt. Zero will be on shortly. Goon Squad is assembling.
Backpack here. Level 1.
Yo, what up, Grimbo? Yo, what up? I was muted because I had some dumbass randos.
I figured you were.
Ready to give thanks for some Apex and Slaughter Kids?
Yeah. Slaughter time. Shit.
Yeah.
Are you in the game?
Alright.
I'll be right back.
That's a matter for you.
Got an extended energy mag here. Level 3. Body shield here.
I should drop the P2020, but I got the hammer point. I've used it on Mozam, but I've never used it on 2020 because I suck with the 2020, like, unbelievably. Oh, you're so far away, low life. You.
So it was Thanksgiving. Was
Yeah.
in France.
It was nice. Oh, he's got a charge rifle up there.
Oh, did you ever end up going out with your brother and meet up with
No,
Happy?
he had pneumonia. My brother got
Likely
pneumonia.
story.
Yeah.
Oh, your brother. Pneumonia. Damn, that's serious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Less than 30 seconds.
Yeah, I still am like, kind of sick from a couple weeks ago.
Oh no, stop shooting my teammates, man. Just
Shooting my
slaughtered the
friends.
true thick boy Thursdays.
Squad mates banned.
It was a
Hold on. Someone's knocking
That's
on my
weird.
door. Hold on.
Everybody know my face. Everybody know my name now. Had to keep my head up straight. No more dead weight. I cake on my way down. Everybody know my face. Everybody know my name now.
wait, did I just loot my teammates box?
Package coming in.
That's our teammates box, bud. That's our teammates box, bud. Stop looting our teammates box. What the fuck is wrong with you? Now you don't get to loot any boxes. You jackass.
Body shield here. Optics here. Close range.
a jerk weed.
You got it. Alright, Dave. It's over.
You see that fool just looting our teammate's box? I tried to multiple times. On my watch, that's not how we play, bro. You.
Yeah, it was my neighbor from across the street. He stopped by, he had people over and he had a party. And it was his birthday today too, apparently, so they brought over some cake and some food and stuff. My Mexican neighbor from across the street, Dave.
So he's like,
That's
these
the
people
one who,
don't like me because I'm Spanish. I need to bribe them with birthday cake.
No, it's probably, you know, I talk to him a lot. But, he's all like, hey, you want some moonshine? But, yeah, he's cool. He's the one who, when the crazy guy came to his door, I was just coming back from a walk. So then, I, like, waited with him until the cops came, and as he's standing out there with, like, a knife in his hand, all scared, you know? He's that crazy dude. But, yeah, they're really nice people.
Never would have thought it otherwise. I have a P2020 with a hammer point round, so I've been kind of keeping it. But maybe I don't know. I should probably. I also have a gold sight on it, so I have to switch to something else. But there was just an RE45. I don't know. I'll never play with the 2020 or the hammer point. If I use the hammer point, I put it on the Mozamps. I don't know. I'm kind of torn. Like, I feel like I should switch it to be safe, but I kind of want to be different.
Well, so you might find out you like some of the weird ass guns.
Yeah.
Just felt like rapping right now. Got bored and wanted to talk to you guys for a second, you know what I'm saying?
Rings not too far. 45 left.
I ask myself, like, how'd I get so lucky? This shit's so gully. I swear I feel a big storm coming, they pissed off, fuck 'em. I'm busy making hits all summer, got Rick Ross money now. Funny things I did not dumb it down. For the sake of the industry, y'all can say that I'm
Alright, let's go. We gotta go through this.
marketing myself. My agility, pimping is dope and silly. I really just made a
Millie of interest.
hard as a facade. Y'all are literally impotent. This is bars out of gym.
Zero said I'll be on shortly as well.
But I think you need evidence. You just saying if it
Oh yeah, I noticed there was a new text. Was that us in the group thing?
Yeah.
Or something? I forgot to read it.
get that hit full of heroin, you'll catch hepatitis with it. So just sit there embarrassed. The symptoms are terrible. We can give up. I don't think that it's bearable. I'm a different kind of beast. Untraveled brain. But still ain't marvelous feel. And the light goes on. Now you feel loud in the street. You got a product we can solve it. Down couldn't be.
Oh, I'm burning the out of him. Look at that. Oh my god, so much damage. With Bernie sticks. I love the Bernie sticks, man. Love the Bernie sticks.
The burnier, the better.
Yep. Don't get in front of me, dickhead.
Who has keep some and the vault key? Oh shit, last vault red. Yeah, burned it.
Oh, one's down and this one's shield's broke. Come on. Push, 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 push. Push and don't lose. Don't lose the push. Win the part. It's 1v1 now. There's one of them left. Either get one of us up or push. Don't sit. Come on. Don't do this. Don't do this. You're gonna lose it. Are you kidding me? We did all this work for you to lose this fight. Are you kidding me? They're getting them up now. Now it's 1v2R. You knocked one push. Push, 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 or get me up or do something. Alright.
Just relax. I got everything under control.
Thanks for that. Catching myself up.
Feel like I'm gonna die. I'm anxious, bruh, way too much. I think I lost my mind. Every night, keep on looking down. If I'm something hit rock bottom, wouldn't even make a sound.
One sec.
Squad mate's banner.
1 minute until close. Rings nearby.
Yeah.
Doing cool
Yeah,
stuff.
man.
or what?
Knocking these mofos to the ground. Oh, there's no more respawn. Sorry, buddy. Oh, I didn't realize I didn't have a knockdown shield.
Shooting that, Brizzo. I need to start fights with mofos. Alright. We do some gangster shit. Some hood rat shit with our
Let's
friends.
do hood ratch with our friends.
What up, Zero?
Not much. Y'all in there with some sucking
Yeah,
the
well,
chuck
we're in two separate games with a bunch of sucker majuckas. It's probably this way. We should probably go this way.
Sucking Majucas fucking everywhere.
Yeah, let's go this way. Come on. I thought this dude was gonna lose it for us, but he didn't. He was able to hide and heal.
Oh shit, I needs me that heavy mag.
I only see one up there.
Good. We're inside.
I don't have any throwables.
Let's explore this way.
Alright, JP.
I think someone's
Oh, and they're respawning right above us, bud.
see that dropship up there.
I think he's sneaking.
Shit.
Go invisible! Yeah, let's fall back here. What? I did 130 damage. Come on, you got that. Knock him. Good. Now get me up. Get me up. Get me up. Good. Good, good, good.
Everything under control.
Thanks for that. Recharging my shield.
Nice. Okay, JP.
Eyes are open though.
Recharging shields.
2 other squads remain.
We need energy ammo.
Okay, I got you covered.
We're close to the ring. 30 seconds left.
If I can find a Oh, gold flatline. I'll take it over my current flatline. Oh, wrong button. Come on. Damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it. Although I probably basically had a gold flatline, but with a better sight. Yeah. Oh, no, I'm being laser rifled. No, stop it. I was gonna drop my P2020 for a 99.
From bug bites to burns, fevers
go this
to
way.
flu, and bruises to broken bones, care is around the corner at Patient First. Walk in to see a doctor from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day of the year.
Haha, get knocked, B.
And drugs are on site.
That's how we roll, bruh.
Insurance plans are accepted for routine illnesses.
Can I get that 99 now?
Hostile spotted.
Oh, I'm being laser rifled from the left.
45.
Oh, man.
Things would be different.
Fuck that champion, man.
Come on, JP. He's got 6 kills. 3 squads left. Someone behind me, bro. You're being shot from the left. Do you not see those giant red arrows saying you're being shot from the left? I'd be embarrassed to be his parents. 1341 damage. 3 kills. Teammate had 6 kills with 1839 damage. And our other teammate had 0 kills with 229. So, you know. Oh, Tara says...
You know.
Gonna make so
Oh,
much
does she
bigger
now?
for the chat on my Facebook to pop up. It, like... wants to be so big. It wants to be a big boy chat.
Well, there's only one other squad. We got this.
I wasn't ignoring you earlier. Minion and me were cuddling, and she had my arms as soon as I turned your stream on. We're still cuddling, just moved to be able to type. Alright, well, I appreciate you being here and watching, T-Dog. You don't gotta talk to me. Yeah, man, you just gotta be here. So I'm ready whenever you fellas are.
I joined Grim and I'm in a lobby with him and it says he's in a match and I don't see you in it.
Yeah, I wasn't. We were in 2 different games. Silly Zero.
Oh, okay.
I'll join that
okay.
game then.
My
I
bad.
can't join that game.
No, I'm now I joined
Come on,
you,
teammate. What the
and now I
fuck,
see both of you.
man?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yo,
Something with
you
Apex.
are trash. What a fucking homo, dude.
Sounds like some fun stuff's happening over there.
Oh my god, dude. So there's one squad left. They're running, so we're chasing them. So, of course, I guess what our crypto does, while we're fighting, he just runs away and sends his drone out into the thing. So it does, and waste time, makes me and teammate go down, and then EMPs us and not the other guys. Like, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, his drone is definitely a preliminary, pre-fight thing. You set it up.
Yeah, when you're already fighting, you don't fucking... We can see all three of them. You don't go fucking hide somewhere to do the drone while we're in a middle of fucking
Even
fight.
if you
Like, how
couldn't
the fuck
see
does that
them,
help?
if there's bullets being shot, you don't go in the drone. You just don't do it.
Yeah, like I downed one, started shooting another dude, and then I went to shield up, figuring, yeah, my other two teammates will help, but I don't know what the one was doing. But the other dude, I realized, like, oh, he's fucking not even hearing one of the crypto. Cool. Cool. So then they just got everybody up, and then then they finished me off, finished a teammate because he was by himself, then the crypto comes in to die by himself. Like,
Right. Well, if he's making bad decisions like that, of course he's gonna die by himself. No one's ever gonna love him. You know what I mean? I gotta change my camera and make that zoom in more so you can see my beautiful face.
I'm not happy that Facebook's little built-in GIF shit censors good GIFs. Like, I mean, you can't get the Mangina GIF off of Step Brothers. You can't. There's all kinds of shit they censor.
Have you already seen the
Nipple
the
hating
GIF
ways.
of the mangina?
No, but surely someone made one.
Well, how do you know they're
Or
not?
they're like, Derek has
How
a
do you know they're
Mangina. Derek has a
they're
Mangina.
censoring it if you don't even know if it exists?
It has to exist.
no one
I mean,
ever
you never
did that.
know. You never know.
Now I want to Google it. Just to confirm my suspicions.
Boom, 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 boom. Oh, I muted my music because it was a commercial. Forgot.
Yes, it exists.
Sure it does. You're just making it right now.
You just look up Mangina GIF and see what's up.
I thought it was GIF.
Yeah, first it's GIF,
Weren't we talking
then
about
it's
this before?
GIF, and now you're saying
I think
GIF.
GIF. Yeah, I think GIF is the way it should
Which
be
one
said.
is it?
Yeah.
bro?
Yeah, shit. I'm a walking contradiction.
You were the one just telling us about it. While we were
Yeah,
discussing
man.
it. Yeah.
All right, where do we want to go, boys? We got plenty of
I just don't know what to believe
people
anymore,
watching.
Wherever you want to go.
Well, you say giraffe.
Teddy says GIF like the peanut butter. I think that's not right. The dude who created it
That's what
them
the
said
dude that
so.
made it said, but he's
Yeah,
full of
well, I
shit.
think the dude who created it doesn't know how the English language works. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I mean, what he doesn't say giraffics, he says graphics. So. Oh yeah, you say graphics, but
Yeah.
it's GIF.
I mean,
I'm a
Oh wait,
bohemian.
so the guy who made it said
GIF.
it
Yeah.
with a J sound?
Yeah, even though it's graphics interchange format.
Well, yeah, we decided against that.
Yeah.
But when he came out to his
Wrong.
family, he said he was gay, and they didn't really get it. So.
Mom, Dad, I'm Jay.
You're like, yeah, we always didn't like you.
I mean,
Fred
that's taking a
pronounced
little far.
with a hard G, obviously.
I like people whether they're Jay or not.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I was talking about how you pronounce that word.
Yeah, exactly. You want to you want a prowler?
Oh,
yeah.
robot alert.
Oh shit, coming.
He probably just swapped shields because he's a little. Oh, he's throwing grenades at me. Yep, he's in this room I'm in, and I'm missing all my shots. Don't you worry about it. Oh,
He's up top.
yeah, he's in the roof room now. Now he's back down the steps. Zero got him.
Got him. You almost had him dead.
Yeah, I just said Zero got him. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Joe, don't. Oh, he's crawling through the flames.
Somebody else is here.
Oh, here comes
Right there.
Doug.
Shoot him with your Jun. Shoot him with your Jun.
You just got John down, bitch.
John the shit out of you.
Alright, so Teddy sent a link to when the dude said it's GIF. I assume that's what it's for.
Oh, I know he said it's Jeff. I also know it's crazy.
Up, somebody else.
Oh shit. Where is it?
I need to.
I hear them. I don't know where they are.
Oh,
I need heavy ammo. I got nothing for my prowler.
here. I have 42 bullets. Oh wait, here. I can,
Yeah,
here I can actually. Yeah, I can drop this. Cause right here.
You're not healing.
Oh, somebody pushed my drone away from me.
That's cool.
Oh, there's somebody here on the steps.
You ran away.
No, I had it on the steps healing me, and somebody pushed it away from the steps. Is what happened.
Yeah.
I'm dropping some of these heavy I picked up.
All right.
Oh, what the fuck? Oh, you got him. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, the heavy bullets? Why, you need some?
Yeah, it's fine. I can. I've got some light I can use until we find some. Well, I might need a little light or something though. I got 25 rounds. I mean, I got.
Here,
20
here.
rounds.
I got 79
Yeah,
light. I can drop a box.
And you need heavy too?
Yeah, but either one will work for now.
Are you hearing footsteps?
Oh, here.
Yeah.
I think so.
Take some shield
There's more
cells for
light.
yourself. Somebody take
Oh,
one of
thanks.
those.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, go green. Got that Phoenix kit.
Need to recharge my shields.
I do hear footsteps, I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're probably on the roof.
Oh, I got a bunch of stuff. Oh, we just got scanned.
We just got pulsed. They're on the steps, down. They're on the down in the down direction.
All right.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
coming. I'm stuck in the boxes. No. Oh, there's Mirage is up here. I kind of knew where he was. He's punching me to death. God damn.
This dude's getting his butt up. Oh, he's about to. He's doing a Phoenix kit. Oh no, he's doing the fucking Phoenix kit that Joe left. Maybe not. Maybe not. He's staying in the same place, I think.
Alright, there's a Mirage somewhere.
I need to heal up. I didn't get to heal up yet.
He's probably snatching my purple armor.
Alright.
I know you can't. Can't heal any faster. I'm just
Heal
saying.
faster, man. He's getting his buddy up.
Yeah, bitch. Guess you
Not
made a
today,
mistake.
Satan. Reload your gun.
No.
Switch gun.
No. Oh my gosh.
Fuck.
So
I
close.
switched guns instead of reloading the first time by accident. Damn.
Ooh, that was a close one. Third party, the story of our lives.
Yeah, I'm gonna write a book.
Well, that was one-on-one squad. That was just that dude. I seen him, but I don't know. What was I doing? I
Well, I
was
was
reloading.
the second squad though. We wiped out the
Oh,
whole
yeah.
first squad. And
All right, so this one we got. We're gonna trash these foes.
Gosh, man, I'll tell you what, man. I ate one little piece of chocolate anything, I got heartburn for hours.
No, really? Chocolate gives you heartburn, yeah.
Yeah, I had like some chocolate ice cream cake and a peanut butter ball.
You're getting too
Yeah.
old, Zero.
Suck on my chocolate salty balls. Stick them in your mouth and suck them.
I don't wanna. Do I have to? What is this? Is like Catholic school all over again.
Reggie, don't eat.
Father Benishek and his chocolate salty balls. Raise your hand if you know Father Benishek. Now, Father Benishek was like the cool priest. The other ones were douchebag rapists.
Because he would let you guys drink in the basement.
Yeah, man. He let us drink the Lord's wine and then suck on the Lord's
cool.
penis.
Them old
Yeah, man. My mom's rolling over in her grave. Me talking shit on Father Benishek. No guns yet. Okay. Oh, guns.
Oh, we found one.
Actually, I'm gonna grab this.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with this Peacekeeper.
Did you ping two guns? Did you say? Did I
No,
get
just a
flatline?
barrel.
Or was it just?
It was
barrel?
open supply bin first, which was a mistake. I heard someone zipping. Was that one of you guys? Like 2 seconds ago?
Yeah.
5 seconds ago?
Not me. Oh, yeah, no, it was.
Oh.
It was.
Oh.
I zipped up.
I wasn't. I see
Alright.
people over here.
Let's go get them.
I'm coming. I only got one clip.
I got a
Yeah,
clip in a little bit.
No bullets for the crowd.
Actually, I might have some bullets. Yeah, I have some bullets I can drop for you. Here. Stop moving. Stop moving.
Ooh, I found select fire. Oh, people are coming to us.
2 select fires.
I think he's got one on his
They're out
gun
here.
too.
One's up here. Oh my god. One's coming in.
One's knocked on the street.
I thought. I'm about dead.
Oh, here. Stay here, Zero.
Thank you.
Yep.
Getting somebody up.
Not today, Satan. Not today.
Yeah, nice shotty. There was another kid on the balcony of
yeah,
a
I'm
nearby
hearing people.
building.
I need
It
bullets.
was heavy.
Yeah. Oh, I just took a fucking 2x.
Did you?
Shit, get this shit off my fucking gun before it kills me. There we go, I just dropped it.
Yeah, no, I grabbed the 2X.
I'm hearing them. I think they're in that building. There's another 2x if you want to. Oh shit, I need to go up.
Oh my god. Here comes the kid. He's in
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
Zero.
inside. He's hurt. Got one behind me.
Fast
Yeah,
guy.
fast guy's upstairs.
I got no ammo.
What do you need ammo for?
This corner here.
Here, I'm picking up a Mozambique. Shit. Oh, fuck. This
Are you
kid's got
upstairs
no
in
gun
this
right here.
building?
No gun. Grim. Yeah, bitch.
Alright, I'm getting Zero up.
Thanks for
Oh, he's here. He's on the steps. Hit him for 87. Nice. Oh, somebody else. Another squad. Damn.
Shit.
Somebody else dead.
Nice.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
we got this.
Where's all the viewers at? We're kicking.
Yeah, teamwork makes
Come
the
here,
dream work.
steps again. Fuck, I really bullets. The dude upstairs. Oh, but he didn't have a gun, right?
Somebody zipping?
Yep, there's the other
Oh,
guy.
somebody's zipping. I'm again out of. I'm gonna just switch to this triple take for a minute.
There's a blue box
I
over
have
there.
syringes.
And they just shut.
Here he comes in that door.
Up top. Oh
The
no,
blue
there he
box.
is.
Shit. On top of you, Grim. He jumped on the wall.
Oh, there's
my
a bunch of
God.
them out here.
Alright, the Wraith is down. Back by the door. Oh, right here.
Oh, yeah, I'm going back.
The guy, yeah, the guy you just
Got
ran right
another
by
one.
is there,
Got a
Grim.
bird man. Here's
Yeah.
the robot. Right here.
Alright, hold on. I'm gonna try to stop him from dying.
Didn't stop me from dying. Nice, just gave me an elimination.
Oh, the bodies hit the floor.
Nice.
I'll get Joe.
What's there? You need bullets, right? There's a box right there. I got.
So I did stop you from dying, didn't I?
You ran right by him and let him shoot me to death.
Wait, you're not. What are you talking?
Yeah,
about?
I'm not a box, but you ran. Yeah, you ran past the dude. In the he was running out. You were running in. Here, Zero. I got some shield cells for you. Yeah.
Thanks.
I have a shitload of heavy. I'm dropping some heavy here. Oh shit, the wall's coming. But I need light. I don't have like.
Yeah, I need light also.
Alright.
Oh
I'm outta
yeah.
here.
Oh shit.
We
Oh, what the fuck is this?
probably go.
I think we got to go through the
Yeah.
tunnel here.
Yeah, I was running through a building and it wasn't like straightforward as I thought. Alright, I got a couple med kits and a few syringes.
I have 6 syringes. That's it.
Shit.
Oh man, we don't have too far.
Damn, this is a far one, huh?
Not as far as we've had to
Yeah,
run
it's pretty
before.
far, but not terrible.
Oh, we got it left here. Yeah.
Next ring's far.
Here you go, Zero.
Heck yeah.
Alright, I'm gonna call on my thing.
Man, we didn't even have time to look
Yeah,
at
no.
it.
When we were running, I saw like another
Yeah.
purple box somewhere. Alright, I'm calling in my special. I think somebody has to loot something off of it for a challenge. I don't know if I ever did that. I needed one more thing looted. Alright, here, I got this stuff if anybody needs. Here, and I can actually drop some heavy. Or light, I mean.
Oh, yeah, I'm trying to main the 301. I've been
Here, can
kinda
someone
doing
come
pretty
pick this
good
up
lately.
and just so I get the loot thing?
Oh, shit. You need, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I can do it. How many things
There's
do you
only
take off?
just one. Thank you. And there's a care package. Looks like it's about to drop
we
in
got
over
it.
there.
We gotta go pretty far. We have to go all the way to the other side of the city.
Okay.
I'm just looking for like light ammo and maybe some big shield cells. Oh, there's boxes here.
I dropped you like
Burning
25 or
sticks.
something.
Purple bolt.
30.
Or something. Yeah, I still. That put me up to like 130, and then now I'm at 150.
Purple
Yeah,
helmet here.
Oh shit.
That's the care package.
White ass helmet.
Care package. Oh,
That's
yeah.
care package.
Care package. Oh.
Ah shit. 20 seconds. All right. That's not shitty.
Alright, I'll grab some light ammo for you. Surprised there's not a whole bunch of boxes here. Usually like big ass fights.
No.
How many light bolts you got?
150.
20.
You only have 20 light bulbs, Zero?
Yep. I got a triple
Damn.
take and a
Okay,
45.
You take that then, Zero. 'Cause I do have a pretty decent
There's that hit.
trailer set up. Alright, so we in? No.
So I got some more. I got heavy bullet.
Ooh, I thought that was an enemy.
That's what I do. Scare my teammates.
Anybody have like one big shield cell they could share?
I don't have
Hold on,
any
let's see what we can
heals.
get out of this.
Don't have any heals at
Oh,
all?
that can.
Nah. That battle went down so
Here,
quick. That
take a big med kit, and I have 8. And use a couple of shield cell. That's 6.
moves.
Yeah. shield
Yeah,
cells
I
for 'em,
can.
They're more important than med kits.
Yeah, he found some heavy ammo.
I got a blue. There's that. If anybody wants that.
Oh, you site.
All right.
Oops, I didn't mean to pick this
All right,
heavy up.
here. I picked up a syringe for you, Zero. Come right here. I'm gonna drop some. Drop this.
Oh, thank you. Hey, I just found
And
a
that.
syringe. A couple of syringes.
One big shield cell would make a difference for a fight.
Yeah, I don't have any.
But yeah, thanks. I'll take
So,
it.
like,
I only got.
I don't, I've already got a med kit.
Okay,
If you need
I'll
that.
take it back then. I only got
Here you go.
4 small ones.
anybody want a 301?
So if you have any spare small ones, I could use them.
Well,
Yeah.
oh, I got
give
4.
some 0. There you go. There's another 2.
What's up, babe?
oh, you mean shield
The
cells.
other squad.
You
Oh,
what?
okay. I've got less of those.
And there's light ammo in here too.
Hold on.
There's only 3 other squads.
You're having a hard time with him?
I'm hearing people. Wait, are you guys?
Okay, after this game, we'll swap. Okay. All right. Oh, here I picked up that light ammo. I didn't know you were here.
Is that you guys?
There you go, Zero.
Oh shit! Look, here's a purple. Did you guys
No.
open this? Purple heavy mag.
Here's Zero. Zero. There's
mag.
light ammo and a blue. Here, I'll bring it to you. Here,
Oh,
right,
okay,
right, right,
I'll come
right.
get that.
I'm right here.
No,
I'm behind you
I'll
already.
grab
So there's that, and there's that if you need it.
Oh, I
There's a
didn't mean to take
2X.
the stock because I don't have a. I don't
Okay,
have a gun for it. You want a blue stock, Jim?
Yeah, I could use one.
All right, I got my break.
So those doors over there have been opened.
Oops,
Stop
wrong
scratching
thing.
the chair, bud.
Here,
Stop scratching the chair, bud.
There's some cells, Joe.
Alright. Somebody's charging up something. Is it? Okay.
0.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you have a
what
choke on your triple take?
that- Oh, that was. I guess that was me. Okay, I didn't. Yeah, triple
Okay.
take. I didn't think I didn't even notice myself aiming down sight though. I guess it was me. Dude, only 3 other squads.
They're
We haven't
fighting on the
even-
other side of this shit.
Oh, I don't even hear them. Oh, now I do. Okay. Whoa, Grim. We're
Oh,
a little
shit, there are
bit
people
behind you,
here.
just so you know. Oh, on us, on us.
Oh, you're getting
Yeah.
shot back there.
Ran in this. Oh God. Oh my God. At R99. Oh my God.
Yep.
That R99 just melted our asses.
Damn, man. Fuck. Where'd they come from?
No,
You know?
just as we were running through the village, I saw a robot in front of me. And then there was a lifeline. Lifeline's the one that actually killed me. But yeah, I was shot by two people.
I thought I was hearing something. Maybe they were just like chilling on the roof of one of those buildings.
Shit. Alright, I gotta swap
I thought it was
dogs.
you guys, but it sounded
Oh, he's
different.
driving Kim nuts. So I will BRB.
Nah.
Come on, Chips. Go. Go. Keep going. Go ahead. There you go.
I'm gonna smoke a cigarette. I'll be back.
All right.
No!
I'm sorry for not to hear too. Anything else in there? Oh, sorry, didn't mean to hit the mic. You're gonna have to calm the fudge down, bud. OP. Get in, go. Jim, go see Mom. You're with me, bud. You better fudge and behave. Alright, I'm back. Finally got this Opie. Apparently he's being a...
Oh, we got a Grim went to get
okay.
a cigarette.
Apparently he's been a super terrorist out there. Make sure the door is shut all the way. It is. Oh! We're going into a game with Grim smoking.
Oh,
Oh,
I'm
you...
not.
Oh, okay. So you left then because I was ready up and he was ready up. Me and Grim are going into a game.
Oh, no.
That's gonna tank his average. His average of getting fudged up. Alright, here we go. I'm back. I'm plowed. I'm white and I'm loud. Obnoxious but consistent. Alright, so let's see. Let's see what Teddy had. He sent me a link to the dude saying some shit. It's probably what it is. Yeah, creator of GIF says it's pronounced GIF. Format has sparked a lively debate on Twitter after announcing that it must be pronounced GIF. He's like some old, dumb-looking dude.
Just because somebody invents something doesn't mean he has the credentials to name it correctly.
Right. I mean, he clearly doesn't. Like, now if he's from a different country, speaks a different language, then maybe. But what up, Zeddy? Welcome to the stream.
Yeah, but obviously he's saying graphics when he says graphics, right? I mean, I would think maybe it's like
It's a graphic.
I don't know.
Image. I don't even know how to say that G with a J sound. Or more J.
It's a G,
Yeah.
like a J.
Image. It's the
A B C D E F G.
good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah. Hey Zed, how you doing?
Round 1. Beginning ring countdown.
Next ring start.
I'm picking up a couple of barrel stabilizers to
Ooh, I can use
drop for everyone.
well, for me, Fudge our teammate.
Yeah.
The
Teammate
Grim
can suck.
Reaper TK.
Oh, that's funny. Grim takes a cigarette break, we get another Grim.
Grim Reaper to cuck. Get it instead of to fuck. That's really the fuck, but still. It's a fuck.
Oh,
When people say something and then put a TF on the end of it, like,
he's
yeah,
TK,
so
though.
it's
Oh, what were you
the
saying? this
cuck.
before? Oh,
I Grim Reaper the cuck.
Someone traveled through here.
oh, I just saw somebody running, I think.
Well, let's make them fucking sad.
Maybe not. Maybe not. I could be
Nope,
wrong.
somebody's shooting our teammate.
Oh shit.
I'm coming.
Oh, he's at the corner of this building, the further
Okay.
corner.
He's inside now. Oh, there's more in there. Nice.
Oh,
Alright, I'm
right there.
reloading. Oh, he's chased me out.
Contact.
Yeah.
I only got 6
His one buddy
heavy
is still
bullets
up,
left.
I think.
You're lucky I like you. Thank you. Come on, compadre. Get up. Come on, come on, come on. Healing my wounds.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Healing up. I grew up in
Oh, I broke his shield. He's pretty fudged up. I missed all those shots.
Oh, I'm almost up.
I guess he got somebody up.
Yeah, dude.
Enemy taken out. Reloading.
It almost looked like kicking the door in killed him. That was funny.
Cluster's time.
Oh, somebody else is here.
Shit.
Opening fire. Reloading.
I need heavy bullets.
You made the right choices.
Yeah, me too. Here, I'll give you some of these. I just picked up.
Okay. Well, no, it's fine.
Oh shit! Did you drop a blue?
It's fine.
armor? Okay.
I'm going double light. It's fine. Keep them.
Oh, okay.
New kill leader. Watch
No, I hear more. Oh, that's alright. Never mind.
Shut up, dog.
Thank you.
Shut up.
Recharging my shields.
Oh, there's more heavy over here. I'm gonna pick this up for you so teammate doesn't get it.
Yeah, go
No,
for
it's
it.
for
yeah.
you, bro.
How much do you? Oh, I just actually found a box.
No, I'm going double light now.
Oh, okay.
So where'd you? Oh, there you are.
Thanks. Mine.
So there's 46 in that, if that helps. Thank you, sir.
There's 20 light.
Me appreciates it. Opie. Shut your fucking mouth.
Does he not like being in the room or confined?
He likes to destroy stuff, and if he's not allowed to destroy stuff, it's a problem.
Prowler SMG here.
Right.
New kill leader. Watch for them.
Hey, sorry, Grim. We got Grim Reaper TK now. No more room
Yeah.
for you. Hey, sorry, you've been
What's
replaced
going
by Grim
on?
Reaper
Yeah.
TK.
Sorry, bro.
Oh, the wall's coming
Alright,
in.
let's maneuver.
I'm gonna make a portal.
Taking tunnel.
Alright.
What, your teammate is Grim
Yeah.
Reaper TK?
Yeah.
He's the Grim Reaper to the cuck.
That motherfucker.
Yeah. I should have sped run before I got caught in the thing. I forgot who I was.
Boy jumping.
Shit, how far do we gotta go?
Yeah, this is a fast one. It's a little further.
Yeah, I think it's our positioning. Had we been on the other side of it, it would have moved slower. Because it would have had less thing to travel.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Opie. Shut your fucking mouth.
Next ring spawn.
I'm gonna look in this building to see if there's any heals
Okay.
or anything. You got a basic bag, don't you?
Yeah. I don't have a helmet though.
Okay. There's no helmets.
Not here. Level 1.
Where are the
Oh man, I
helmets?
gave up the wrong gun. I should have.
What are you
I
looking
dropped
for?
my. Crap. I dropped my 301 for the Havoc. I wanted to drop my RE45 for the Havoc.
Oh man. Yeah, that sucks.
I just dropped the barrel stabilizer that I want to pick back up. Where did I drop that? Here it is. Alright. Go with the.
I've got another.
Nah, I
spare
found
one.
it. I just wanted to. I dropped it because I had the Havoc, then there was a Devotion, so I'm like, well, I can put it on the Devotion and make it not.
I think he's got enemies
Okay.
over here. I'm not sure. I don't hear them.
I'm coming. Somebody pinged it. Unless maybe that was you pinged it.
He just pinged over
Okay.
here, I think. Like a care package or something might have landed. Yep. Up in this area.
Yep, there's people at the care package.
Got one kid.
I helped you get that kill, because that's what I do. I'm a kill helper.
I believe I did. Whoop, whoop. You seen meds?
Yeah, there's some syringes here. I'm gonna pick them up so teammate doesn't get them. Just
Here, I got them. I've got some to drop for
Okay.
you too.
yeah,
Oh, okay. Well, I guess we can both got a lot.
yeah.
now.
I got 6 small ones now.
That's I
Ooh,
got 6 cells.
There's a
and 6
big one.
syringes.
Big.
Some lot.
Oh, there's somebody here.
Somebody else coming in.
Oh, and somebody's shot him out of the fucking sky.
Where they at? Oh, way to go, dude. I was like, where is this fucker? Oh, this storm's
yep.
coming in. I think we got a guy behind us
Sure.
somewhere. Yeah, throwing nades.
Yep. We should go get safe. They're getting somebody up.
Okay. Yeah, they probably are going to get burnt.
Yep, he's right behind you, coming up the street.
Okay. Shit.
Alright, let's just get safe, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, there's people on the hill to our right.
Oh shit.
They might be coming around that building.
Shit.
Is there energy bullets in there? I need. Oh,
Shit. There's a guy right above us. Oh, I heard him bad.
oh, he just went invisible.
There's 2 of them. Get myself up.
Alright, let me shield up. There's
They're
somebody
both right here.
laser rifling from the other direction too.
Yeah. He's getting shot from both sides.
Alright, here we go. Shit, I don't have any more energy bullets.
Got one more guy coming at you, Jim. Right in your face.
Oh man!
Oh, good try, good try.
I was out of
Good
energy bullets,
ass.
so I couldn't switch guns. That sucked. $773 damage and 0 kills.
Nice.
We all had good damage.
Yeah, that's always a pain, yeah. Yeah, I was surprised at our teammate. I didn't notice that he was doing work.
Yeah, he was putting hard work in just to get the kill fix.
Grim, you in a good game or a bad game?
Yeah, pretty good so far. Why is it
Yep,
getting over?
our game thing's over.
Yeah, I didn't know what to...
I got a gold vest and shit. Oh, just spotted someone. Alright, I'm gonna go be reckless.
No, don't be reckless.
Okay,
Get all
okay.
your
Yeah, play how you like.
get all your stuff done. Opie, what are you doing, puppy? I just realized that
Gold vests don't come
that's
around
true.
every game.
That is true.
I'll be right back.
Opie, say hi to the fans. Say hi, fans. Hi, Ada. Can't eat my mouth. Can't eat my mouth. Stop it. No, I need that. That's my microphone. I need that. Just because it's fuzzy doesn't mean you get to eat it. That's not how life works. Why couldn't you be this good for mommy? You made mommy like loser shit.
Ah, squad wipe, motherfucker. Nice. Kill leader.
Nice.
You're doing big things.
Turn on my stream and see how Opie's acting now. How can you do this for her? Hmm? Alright. Isn't he being adorable? Say hi to mommy. Say hi, mommy. Say hi, mommy. Hi, mommy. Where you going? Opie, where you going? Alright, lay down, Opie. Alright. I'm ready to rock, roll, and stop, drop, pop, below, and right in her mouth tits.
Are you ready to ready up?
Now you're asking too much. Now you're asking too much of me. No, I was waiting on Zero to get back from bathroom break or something. I don't know. I wasn't really paying attention because I'm a terrible friend.
6 kills, dude. I am tearing it up.
Hell yeah.
The camera only does that because I have it zoomed in. So when I have it zoomed in, then I can pan. So if I zoom it all the way out, it just shows you the one picture. Since I have it zoomed in, it can pan through the picture that like it would normally show. And I know there's a bunch of junk in the background. Come on, Opie. Now you're not being good, Opie. Now you just punched me in the tits. Get down. Nothing up there is for you. There you go. Go back to being adorable. See, this is why you can't show him affection, because then he thinks he deserves it. Come on. Hop up there. There you go. Where we going, J96 sevenfold?
It's a strange.
Yeah, like I don't get it. Like some people, like that's not a name Xbox gave him. Xbox gives like Fluffy Waffles 84 or like
Yeah.
Pinky
That's a perfect example.
Mountains 10 or whatever, like some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So he's like, I don't like Fluffy Waffles. I'm gonna make it J96 sevenfold.
Yeah, I don't.
Right,
What
like
the fuck is that?
you were better off.
It's probably a reference to some dumb shit. That only
Yeah,
he
well,
likes or something, I don't
sevenfold,
know.
I think, is a band. Avenged Sevenfold.
Yeah, Avenge Sevenfold.
Yeah, Avenge, yeah. Come on, Opie. I'm in the middle of stuff now.
Yo, 9 kills.
Nice.
Dude. I'm
Hell
good.
yeah.
Come on, Opie. Opie, get down. Opie, get down.
Dude,
Get down.
I
Get
wonder
down.
if I might get the
I'm coming.
Right here,
The
right on
damage
the stairs.
badge.
I'm coming.
And right here.
Opie, get down.
One down low, one
I just got a
upstairs.
P2020.
That's his buddy, I think. There's a dude execute
coming.
me. There's a dude execute me.
I hit him, but it just wasn't enough. Well, we're gonna leave this game because Sevenfold isn't playing with us anyway. So
Oh yeah, suck it Sevenfold, you little piece of shit.
yep.
I want to spec him just to see what the fuck.
He's coming now. Looks like.
Yeah, he's being an idiot. See ya.
The map looks
Yeah,
like he's
well.
coming. Yeah.
We're going. I'm going.
I'm gonna wait till he gets in here and gets killed. Nellie's here fighting him, and I'm leaving.
Excellent.
Avenged Sevenfold, says my girlfriend. I don't know what the stuff is. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know who, like, Eminem and Mercules are. I'm sorry.
What's he saying about? Oh, it says your girlfriend. I thought you were saying the kid in the game was
Oh, no.
using the speech text to speech shit.
No.
I was like,
My
what does that
girlfriend
mean?
said it's Avenged Sevenfold. So, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's not Mercules, so I don't care. Alright?
I'm gonna be while we're waiting for the Grimster here. Or are you wanting to play another one? Oh yeah, I guess
Whatever.
Grim's being a badass.
We do
right
whatever.
now,
If you
so-
got something you can do, you can do that.
No, I was just launching my
Oh,
music
okay.
program.
She says maybe you're the bad teammate.
Excuse me.
I beg to differ. He pinged that
Amazon Music.
probably. He pinged that that
It's MERC.
no MERK Elise.
I've seen it all. Nothing surprising.
Yes.
ULEF. Mercules.
Mercules.
Sounds like a holistic medicine.
I need some more Mercules. Sounds like some shit in a video game. Saving up all my Mercules.
Yeah, some Mercules. Well, this is Microphone Killa featuring Mercules.
That's a good song. That is Microphone Killer is the song. I think it's Chris Webby. It's a good song.
Oh yeah, it is.
Oh, 10 kills now.
Nice.
Forgot to update you with the cool stuff.
Nice, 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 nice. Where's the ghost of John Knox gonna take us?
Come on, Ghost of John Knox. Take us to victory.
Lead us to the promised land. Oh, really? You're gonna jump and go backwards? Are you kidding me? No wonder you're a ghost. Because you're dead all the time. Boom. I messed that up.
People landing with us. Oh shit. I'm coming back. So I won't get shot.
Alright. Do you got a gun?
Yeah.
Oh.
Somebody's targeting
All
me.
right, come on, Opie. You can't shoot
no,
that in my nuts.
I thought I didn't know I was the medic.
All right, I need a shirt. Oh, I'm being shot from everywhere, everywhere. Is there a shirt? Oh, up here, right, like laying on my feet, bud. I think someone. Oh, that's you. Okay.
Got one of them swapped with him. Yeah, he's getting his buddy up.
Okay.
He's going to get his buddy
I'm
up right
coming.
here.
I'm coming. I'm coming.
Come attack. Arr, arr, arr. And his other buddy's running hard. to the
Oops.
left. Yeah, good job. Yeah, there's his other. Oh, it's a different.
Come on, teammate. What are you
Oh, it's a
doing,
different
John
fucking squad.
Knox?
He's standing on a roof, pretending to snipe. God.
Oh my God. That's why he didn't. That's
What a
why he
fucking
didn't
loser.
join the fight, because he was terrible. But like, you had a better chance when
Yeah.
there's two of us.
What kind of shit?
12 kills.
Nice.
I have to get
way
the
to go.
damage badge. I did like 100% of the damage on all these people, so I don't see how I wouldn't get the damage badge.
You want to just
Sure,
wait for
yeah, we can
Grim?
wait for him. He's not gonna get 12.
This is killing me playing.
Yeah,
with
he's
these
not gonna
fucking
get 12
losers.
kills when he plays with us, though. He's not gonna do that.
Yeah, I just pretend to get him when you can't.
Yeah,
prove
that's
it.
exactly,
Cool.
exactly it. All right, I'm gonna go get a drink, and pray to the Apex gods. I'll BRB. I just dumb. Oh my goodness gracious. My apologies, gentlemen. Are we here? We ready? No, Kim was adjusting the blinds, or the I guess the actual curtain part in the front window. So 'cause the dogs, like, when they walk up there and they try to step out, they always like step on the shit and like fuck the shit all up. Anyway, she was adjusting that so like people couldn't see in, and like pulled the one thing off the wall. So I was gonna leave it. I'm like, just shut like the blind things. We have like vertical blinds, but just shut them. But because the dogs walk up there, we're missing like at least 2 on each end and like 1 in the middle, so like you can still see in the house.
What, the supports or whatever?
No, the vertical blinds. Yeah, the blinds themselves. They're missing 2 on each side and 1 in the middle, so you, without having the curtains up, you can still see in the house. So so she wanted me to fix that, so I did real quick. And I also made my fat ass plate of leftovers.
Oh yeah. Oh, so guess how much damage I did?
1953.
Higher.
1999.
Higher.
4,741.
Higher.
87,201,691.2. Nice.
You got it. You got it. I got a 29.
Nice. So you got the 2,500 badge.
Like that, yeah. Yeah.
It's a vulgar display of power.
3rd badge. Yeah, I was straight up just like wrecking people non-stop. I was like killing people without even getting hurt. I was like dropping the first 2 people in the squad without even taking a shot.
Then I expect to win this game.
Yeah, the flatline was just wrecking people. Well, it was a fluke. It was a fluke. It was an accident. I didn't really know.
Let's see. Where'd you land that time, Grim?
We landed like over there.
Well, I guess we can try it again.
Why don't you wait till we're a little bit further?
It looked kind of far away, but it's because we got that field of view up.
That's
yeah,
the
we
spot
got
to land, apparently.
1 squad to our left. Oh, yeah, I don't know where to go.
I'm just landing in this house.
Oh yeah, this squad's going right here. How about you want to just follow them in here with me?
You're way ahead of us. We're not even close to you.
Wait, why are you not here?
Oh,
I thought we were going
that was
where I pinked. Oh god, I got.
I thought that was
that ain't gonna cut it.
Grim with us.
Alright, I'm coming. I don't have a gun now.
Shit, on our way.
I scared some dude off
Yeah,
from
sorry,
my
I just picked up the one.
He's crying.
I didn't see another.
I'm picking up a bunch of ammo and some weapon parts. Opie, shut up.
There's people in here.
Alright, I'm coming. I just got a alternator.
Shit. I'm with you. Where they is.
There's an energy mag there. So the bullets came from down there. They're about to come through, I think.
Oh, I got my music too loud.
No, I am hearing people.
Yeah, they're on the roof, I think.
Well.
Someone's
No,
right
he's in
here
here.
on me.
He's coming after you, Joe. He's coming after you.
He's dead.
Oh, vault key.
Oh, I hear a robot.
Flying fast, bitch. Yeah, somebody shoot that thing down.
I'm fighting somebody. I'm shooting people down.
I still didn't get it.
I'm gonna fight people.
We're coming, we're coming. Way to go. I hear somebody else. I'm gonna throw a bot over on Joe.
Okay. Shut up, Opie. Opie, cut it out. Here, Opie. Opie, have a tater tot.
Blue armor in here, Grim.
Your armor needs to be
Cool. Which one? The
healed
purple box?
0.
The one that Joe's on. No, I was telling.
Yeah,
I was saying
your
blue
armor's
armor
empty
for,
is what I'm saying.
Grim. Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
I need a
didn't have any
select
heals, I just found some.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
So did that guy turn into a box? He did, right? So where's the third guy? That was only
Get
two
down.
to be killed, right?
No, there's 3
one's
boxes
inside,
here.
or whatever. No, there's 3
Oh
boxes.
yeah, there are 3 out here. Okay, right.
I don't know who killed the one guy. I only killed 2 of them.
I did one.
Me.
Grim and me were
I
both
didn't get the
shooting.
last shot on it. Yeah.
Extended light mag here. Left barrel stabilizer here. What do you think is over here? Sniper stuff here.
Opie, shut the fuck up, dog.
Damn, I got this song on 5% and it's loud as shit.
Yeah. Oh, this shit's all looted. You gotta get towards the ring.
Level 2. I'll take that.
Care package being delivered.
Looks like a care package is coming in. Big
Got a
things
shotgun
about-
here. Barrel stabilizer here. Level 1. Extended energy mag here. Level 2.
Hemlock here.
Oh, is there ammo by that hemlock?
Don't think so.
No. Okay.
Oh.
I have 100, so I'm okay.
So I might have shot down that vault, but it was really far away. I was flying super fast, so I don't really know what happened.
Yeah, that's about what I got. There's some.
Heavy ammo here.
Oh, did you not?
Yeah, I got 100. I can live. I got 160 light.
Well, I mean, I got one.
Nah, it's cool. I got. No, I'm good. Stop it. Take it. I don't want it.
Here
Okay.
comes the wall.
You take that ammo.
You take it.
Take it like a bitch.
Opie, get down.
Alright, shit's like right on us. Oh, 99. Yep, I was
Oh,
right.
here comes the
Yeah.
train. Don't get hit by it.
Planes coming above us.
Oh, you guys are down there. I'm playing on the train tracks.
There's more heavier.
Opie.
Just one box in here, but
Opie, shut up. You're gonna have to go live in the room by yourself, bud.
why don't you buy that dog a couch to play with?
He needs like a, I don't know, a pet rabbit to kill or something.
bedroom set, doggy?
Can anybody carry this?
I go for it.
Yeah, I can figure I'll make room for it.
Oh, I can carry it now. I just found a bigger thing.
Alright, you want it? Good.
Bigger bag. Yeah, I have room now.
Ooh,
Shit,
there's
I'm
a
not even
99.
without a bag. Oh yeah, I just dropped that 'cause I found 301.
Ooh, big shield cell.
Sounds like he's telling you Timmy's in the well or some shit.
He's telling me like, I want your tater tots.
He's definitely in the well.
Ow. You just kidding with that? You
What?
said there was a U site and then I went to ping it and it disappeared.
Oh, there is. I dropped it. I picked up accidentally. and
I
dropped
picked
it.
up a
So
circle site, so I didn't pick it up.
Yeah.
yeah, Zero stole it. That's what happened.
Another.
I turned it into a circle site, snatched it from you.
Sneaky.
More heavy.
Oh, 2x. Fuck yeah.
What's that noise? People. Right there.
Okay. Shit. Man, I got messed up.
Hope somebody's on me, below me.
They're right here.
Oh, I had it on single fire like a fucking chump. Oh, they're gonna EMP me.
Shit.
Yep.
God damn.
I got lit up. There's one there, one behind you. One
Yeah,
over
I broke
here.
the shield on the fast guy. I got screwed up in that battle.
Shut up, Opie. This is serious business right here.
They're both, one of them's on Grimm's box. They might both be.
We
I
got
think the other one
guy
ran
up
away.
there. I hear him.
No, no, are you kidding me? Oh my god, why did that take so long to switch guns?
You were reloading, it looked like.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I got fucked up in that fight.
That makes me so angry.
Ditto.
Lay down. Sit. Lay down. Lay down. Lay down. You know how to lay down. 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 You know how to fucking lay down. Lay down. There you go. Was it that hard? That's what's so frustrating. Like, he knows his commands. He just chooses not to listen.
Alright, so I did my hair for this. Nothing wrong with looking good in the ring, and I look good.
Remember me tell you, I got your back.
I got your back. I watched The Irishman today. It was pretty good.
Hey, somebody said it wasn't good. I forget who. Somebody posted on Facebook that was like, save
It
your.
was super long.
If you want to save 3 hours of your life, don't go see the Irishman or something like that.
Don't go see the Iron.
Nah, it's definitely worth seeing.
What's it about?
It's about a hitman for the Philly mob.
You know, the plot.
Oh, okay.
Jimmy Hoffa's a lot in it too.
Oh, okay, okay.
It's basically about Jimmy Hoffa and hitman who works for him. But it's mainly the hitman story. Yeah, I'm not gonna make.
Hope you stay down.
Hope you stay down.
Zero is.
I'm just gonna
no,
climb
Zero
the
pulled.
mountain.
Oh,
Yeah.
damn it.
Now I'm on this side of the mountain. God damn it.
Yeah, I was trying to skip to Grim because he said he wasn't going to make it over the mountain.
Now you just killed me, Zero. You just killed me.
Damn it all.
How does it feel to have blood on your hands?
Opie, shut up, ma'am. Opie, you're gonna send me to jail for fucking animal cruelty if you don't shut your fucking mouth. I need like a technical difficulties screen to pop up when I beat the shit out.
There's a vest.
Found an extended energy mag here. Level 2.
No, what? Yeah, what is that? That is a.
What's that?
Why won't that pop up? It's a turbocharger. Why can't I pick it up?
I can't pick it up.
Here's a... Oh, never mind.
Got it. You guys loot the whole train yard?
You have
I don't know. I didn't.
A lot of it.
I
I didn't go over... Oh, well, never mind. We
I
mostly
did a lot
yeah.
of these. I did the cars back
word on my
there.
computer.
I did.
any
I think
of
so.
these
Half the
ones here.
buildings.
So, the finishing
I don't think I did those buildings.
It's like a 2-page liability waiver, which I get, and it's not. I want you to read it too, but I don't think it's about her getting
I still
bit.
just have a triple take as my second
I don't
gun.
think we're like taking liability for
Trying
her
to get
getting
rid
bit.
of
I
this
think it's
shit.
all about like you're not gonna sue us. Like we don't guarantee any results, and you're not gonna sue us because your dog hurt somebody.
There's a Havoc if you wanted
after
it.
Is
Ain't
all I
for
think
me,
this thing
but
covers.
some people like that shit.
Okay.
That
But
weird ass.
the main
Yeah.
problem is the questionnaire is like
I
5
did the
pages,
choke on the triple takes. Maybe,
and it's not doesn't cover both of them. We're gonna
Yeah, it's
do it
kind of
twice,
cool with
and
the
it's
choke.
pretty detailed. So I really think we need to do it together.
Oh, there's
Okay.
another choke.
So maybe tomorrow when you get home from work, we'll sit in here.
I could have used that.
We'll answer them all. We'll have to fill out both. So that kind of concerns
Yeah,
me.
I
Like,
gave
when
up
she
the choke.
replied,
Picked up
she
a
knows the
hemlock.
situation is both dogs.
Right.
But the way the questionnaire is, I'm concerned it might be. So it
Yeah,
was
definitely
135 per
flatline.
session,
On them.
but there's also
They
245 for the
take one.
training plan, which we need.
Okay.
So where you guys
So
want to
I
go?
think you gotta put both of them together.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I
What do
think
you
the
guys
first
feeling?
one's gonna be like 500 bucks.
Alright, I don't care. I'm
Which
following you
is
guys.
okay.
Real side or through the
I'm okay with
mall
that.
tunnel?
We have
Or...
major problems,
Right.
but I can't do 1,000 if we need to do it for both of them.
Right.
So all that. I
Yeah,
would
we
do
can
it
do
to
it.
me. That's not gonna work out. So we need to come up with a plan and actually make sure we sit down and do it tomorrow.
Okay. I get done at 4, so we'll do it after that.
God, I'm so anxious.
We'll just relax. It's not. We'll figure it out. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. Go chew one of those CBD things.
Helmet here. Level 2. Barrel stabilizer here. Extended heavy mag here. Level 2.
Flatline in the U side over there, Grim.
Compadres, heavy ammo here.
Nice. Are you guys hearing people?
Yeah, no, we'll definitely whatever it takes, baby. We'll figure it out.
But just how detailed this is, I like her already.
Okay.
I just want to say that.
Okay. All right, I'm back.
We go push a shot.
Show or try to get
some
25
kills.
kill streak.
Phoenix kid here.
I got good heals myself if one of y'all wants to carry that Phoenix kit.
I got a couple syringes, 1 med kit.
Yeah, I got 1 med kit. No big shields.
Oh, I think I just saw somebody up there.
Can you climb here?
I could be wrong.
Oh,
I thought that I saw someone.
Oh no, that's you.
Opie, shut the fuck up, dog.
Yeah, over there.
Yep,
over
they're
there.
shooting me now.
Shit. All right.
Yeah, all of them have sniper guns.
All right,
Damn,
I need
get
to shield
wasted.
up.
Oh my god. That charge rifle hit me for 100.
I was looking for a shield, but I don't find one. I'm shielding up now.
Oh my god. Fuck. I'm... God fucking damn. They're all around us. I don't even know if I...
Keep up with me, compadre.
They're on my box. They're on my box.
Okay.
Wherever.
Giving my shield to recharge. Shot fired. And they're hitting me.
I'm dead. Behind it.
Dude, I got hit for something like 130, and it looked like it was just a charge rifle. One charge rifle hit for like 130, dude. And then they threw a Bernie stick on me and burnt me to death. So I look in the death log, and it only shows the Bernie stick doing 36 damage, but it was like immediately after I'd been hit, like 5 seconds later, it would
Covering the
show it.
tracks.
Yeah, man. And some of that
Covering
shady
the
shit.
cheats.
I wonder if they buffed the charge rifle, dude.
I don't know. Could be.
I don't know.
Could be.
Lock and load, rinse, repeat. It's that simple.
Pay attention. You might learn a thing or two.
Good day to take out some fools and be back in time for dinner. I got pork chops tonight.
This is your champion.
This might be a good place to land, but what do I know?
Let's do it.
Let's do.
Every kid I come up against tonight with a little distance on me is just lasering my ass.
They're in beast mode.
Damn, no guns up here. Shit.
No guns
they
down
are.
here either. Oh,
Where you at?
I
Where you
just
at?
found.
Who's? I'm coming.
Ah, I got her with the grenade.
Oh, I'm being shot, motherfucker.
100 damage with my
There's
grenade.
two up here.
I know.
Where's
Right
that?
here,
Joe,
there's
where's
two of
he at?
them. He's right there.
God damn, dude. I don't.
Yeah, I saw that. That was insane. That was really quick.
What? Dude, it says 80 points and 2 hits from a flat line.
Are they yellow dots? Are they both headshots?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that headshots? Yeah,
Two
okay,
hit
kid.
things.
Way to
40
way to
and
throw it up there and get 2 headshots from the flat line, you fucker.
Lucky ass mofo. Yeah, that Gibraltar is
Maybe it
part
doesn't-
of what killed me.
Maybe you should just always aim right for the head, even if it takes another second or something. I mean, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't have any armor either, so.
Win again.
I'm just in a bad mood. Positive thinking.
Mhm.
Positive thinking.
Nothing like cold steel on a hot day.
Just think about that time. Never mind. I have some viewers in here, so I can't get all crazy.
Just think about that
Mhm.
good time.
Think about this time. We're gonna go in, we're gonna land, we're gonna be tactical,
do
we're
it.
gonna
Let's do it.
fudge them up.
Fudge them up.
Think about how good I look in my new shirts.
Fucking charge rifle.
Better than the no gun I got. Well,
I'd probably do better without a gun, honestly.
well then you need to practice with it.
Just ripping dudes.
Because it's a
heads
vicious,
off.
vicious gun. I just picked up a 301. But it is like, it's
Who's the best
insanely
over here?
powerful.
Are you doing Robush on here? Or there's someone else? Oh, there's a dude
Someone
there.
else. Okay.
Oh yeah, somebody's right here. Oh, he just
Ooh, I
picked
need
up a
some
purple armor right here. I need to grab their blue armor.
There's
Yeah.
a blue vest in here. Get that blue vest.
Shit.
My bad. Were you trying to get that behind us, Grim?
Right on you. Right on you.
Hold on, both sides of me. I'm gonna die. Oh, I need to escape.
I'm chasing somebody to the big building.
Alright, I'm healing up real quick.
One sec.
She's upstairs.
Just us now. Gotta watch each other's back.
I'm going up the other side of this building. Oh, it just jumped off here.
Okay, my whole shit is like
There's two of them down here.
almost rubber banding.
That's my arc star.
Yeah, that's the
Down.
robot the Cossack just got up above my box.
Nah, motherfucker, die. Oh, right up here.
Give my shields a recharge.
Good shooting.
I thought you were just trying to cut a hole in your stream so it would just like fall off your TV.
I was.
Hey, got our
I'm like out of fucking bullets now.
I got heavy in my box
Oh, here's some light there.
and a Spitfire. There you go.
No, if you just want to roll out of here, there's just 3 of them still.
3 of them. I put 1 of them out.
He was close.
Did you put them all the way out? Then there's 2 of them.
Yeah, 2 is still a lot. Be chasing ya.
Give my shields a recharge.
Good shit.
Roll out, roll out. That just kills it. Got like
Roll
def-
out.
Give my shields a recharge.
He's getting her up.
No ammo. Shit.
He probably brings back before he notices. I'm
Yeah,
not paying
I'm going
attention
for
right
that.
now.
Looking for health though. Oh shit! Somebody just.
Yep,
Oh,
they're
there.
already there now.
Oh, nice.
Give me a sec. Recharging shields.
I think that's another squad. That looked like a Birdman.
1 sec.
Alright, I'm skedaddling.
So you're caught between 2 squads right now.
Ah, somebody just landed in front of me. Fuck.
Using a med kit. 1 sec.
There's 2 people landing in front of me.
Ooh, somebody flying in. You saw that, yeah. Hell yeah.
Taking a knee. Patching up.
They're zipping like some bitches.
There's a revive thing way through the tunnel.
Dude,
Did they not use that one in the train yard?
yeah, I
Okay.
guess they didn't.
I know
yeah,
you're
there's-
surrounded by dudes.
I think they would just rush us, and
Somebody's in that building with you, I think.
I think you're right. Ah, motherfucker.
Taking fire.
Oh no.
Fuck. Fuck! Oh my god, man.
You were doing good.
Stresses me out.
Almost.
I got a tinkle.
My last daily is to play a ranked match. Do we want to switch to ranked?
Yeah, we can do that.
I have a weekly to get 120 ranked points. So I doubt I'll do all that today, but it'd be nice.
That could be in a couple games. It could be in one
But
game.
yeah. I also need to do another 95 damage with assault rifles, and that'll give me a whole battle pass level. One more neutral care package will give me 6,000 star points. And then the 120 rank points, and I'm done all of week 9. I still have challenges in other weeks, but
Nice.
Apparently, I like the ability to set a headset down without it falling off in the fucking floor.
You want to switch to ranked there? Zero, my hero.
Oh yeah, sure. Oh yeah. That's what the problem
Yeah.
is.
We got this now. It's in the bag. It's a shame it's 1 o'clock in the morning. That sucks. I gotta make some work at 8 a.m.
Oh shit, dude. Send you to bed with murder on your mind.
Safety's off. Weapons free.
This match is gonna be extra.
Yo, every day, probably multiple times a day, I think I told you about this. I must have accidentally liked Kids Room Lamp in Facebook Marketplace.
What'd you say? What'd you just say?
There must have been a post for a Kids Room Lamp in Facebook Marketplace that I accidentally liked one time. Because I keep getting messages, I keep getting notifications like, there are new items related to the Kids Room Lamp you messaged in Bucks County area. Like, so it's just a bunch of like notifications I get about fucking lamps. Like, I could care less.
That's fucked. Can you do the same thing you can on an ad?
I'm landing in the front car.
I don't know.
You want to land on different cars so we get a gun, hopefully?
Yeah, I'm on middle.
Shit.
Oh, I got what? A gold. Yeah,
dude's on the
dude's
back
up
car.
with Grim too.
Motherfucker.
Oh shit. I got nothing.
He's on the roof. I'm gonna climb off.
Train's stopping anyway. Is he still up there?
Tastes like victory.
There's a purple vest being ran over.
I got you.
Yeah, you're wonderful. Thank you.
Oh shit.
Oh, these bins are up.
I got a gun down here. There might be more. I don't know.
Anybody have any heals?
Oh yeah, I got Phoenix kits. I forgot that you were. If you can, where are you? Oh, Zero. There's a what's it called right there? Body shield. I'm coming to you, Grim.
Where?
Phoenix kit here.
Thanks.
I'm going into the station. I got a gold Eva.
Was that you that just healed your shield?
It wasn't me. Oh,
heard
it
his
was.
shield
I
was
think it
up.
was
Oh,
Grim.
yeah, up here.
He did a Phoenix kit.
Okay.
That was like 30 seconds ago.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure.
99 there.
I'm
maybe
pretty sure it
somebody's
was
around
Grim.
us. I don't.
Pretty sure. The timing of when you said it to the timing of when he did it, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, probably.
Where the fuck's this Valky at?
This is all looted up here.
Watching this sector.
I got it.
Who's got 2 thumbs and a ball key? This guy. You get it.
Joe, there's the train
Okay.
yard one. You want to just hustle over there?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see it on the map now. I guess it was a glitch that I saw at that one game.
Oh, you saw it.
Yeah, I think I hear stuff to our left.
To the left? I'm hearing stuff over there.
Oh, do you need the
Oh,
light?
I got rid of the
You-
thing.
Do you need the light, Zero? You got the light.
Yeah, I could use that box. Thanks.
I was just picking up ammo because eventually I'm going to switch one of these guns.
Oh yeah.
So,
Oh yeah. I do the same shit.
Like, I would have already dropped his Eve if it wasn't gold.
Are you chasing him, Grim?
Nah. I'm on the way to the vault.
It's a 99 right there.
I was waiting for you guys. Alright, let's go.
Alright.
Let's take this balloony.
Alright.
Balloonzilla. Check to make sure it's still not looted when you get a chance.
We might as well go to the next balloon.
Okay.
Something good there.
It's on. Ring's moving.
Backpack here. Level 1. Sending out my decoy.
I don't even have a backpack. It sucks. Yeah, I'm going straight
Yeah,
for
you'll
the
get
vault.
a good one in the vault. In the vaulty vault.
Somebody's flying in.
Oh, we already left.
Well, we were flying away, Zero. We're going straight to the vault.
Fly, Zero. Fly,
not behind
Zero.
Maybe that was you guys I heard taking off.
Alright, I'm waiting for Zero
Right.
to make sure nobody follows him in. Now, it looked like somebody flew in that direction.
I'm right behind you.
No bamboozle.
Okay.
Alright, let's get to the vault. And then we can defend it.
Grappling. Knockdown shield here. Level 3.
Oh, shit. I took the wrong one.
Good shit.
Backpack here. Level 2. Standard stock here. Level 3. Helps keep that target centered.
Anybody got a syringe?
No, I do not. I got 2 Phoenix kits, but no syringe.
Yeah, I don't. I wouldn't want to waste the Phoenix
Yeah, I
kit on
have.
that.
I have 2 syringes. There's one of them.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciated it.
There you go.
New kill leader. Watch your 6. Knockdown shield here. Level 2.
Oh, is there a turbocharger in there?
Yeah, I
Something
picked up
gold,
the turbocharger
I didn't
for
notice.
my.
Okay.
Forgot him.
Yeah, I picked it up for my Havoc.
Oh. Okay. No shit. I don't have heals. I'm fucking out of here. Well, I guess I'll check these bins for heals.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah, all I have is Phoenix kits. Shit.
Go into the go where Grim's going, and I'll throw us a zip
Yep.
when we get around this
Yep.
fucking horse shit.
No, I'm just gonna keep running.
All right.
Ready. It's zipline time.
Oh, somebody's running right below us.
They're dead. Just keep on going. Nice.
Ring's not close. Hustle up.
Very nice. I hear other shit going down. Going down. Somewhere an airstrike is. Oh, right here's the
Yeah.
airstrike. Oh shit.
Shit, people are right there. Right at the ring.
Taking a knee.
Oh, they're shooting me. No. Oh, they're
Hit
shooting
him
me.
for about 60.
Yeah, I'm coming.
Got one down.
Bullets.
Fuck. Yeah, we're dead.
There's a Gibraltar behind that rock. Two got. Oh, I don't know how to say where they're at. Oh, it's multiple. Oh, it's
Nah,
not
it's, I think
one.
it's still the same spot. It's a Gibraltar and a Bangalore. One's looting Zero's box. Now another squad is sniping them.
Now another spot is.
They're getting somebody up.
Rank, fuck.
And somebody's zipping.
Oh yeah, maybe they'll third party him.
Yep.
Yep. Yep. Get 3P'd, bitches. no.
God, they like sniped the shit out of me.
Get down, Opie. Get down, get down.
Oh, hell yeah.
I'm not getting hurt. Look at me not getting hurt. Oh, no.
Oh, no. What? Come on. Come on. Come on.
Yeah.
If that guy hadn't been a coward, he would have let you get up. Hey, you held out until we got to top 10, so I think we made some points.
Nice.
I still
Yeah.
lost points. But I didn't lose as many as I would.
I was break even.
Yeah, I had one.
Plus,
I got the
was at
knockdown on
28,
that
so-
dude that was running behind you, Zero, when we were zipping in. So I got one kill, and that was it. But I was at rock bottom.
Oh, I knocked a dude down and his fucking teammates got him up. Like some helpers.
Like some dumbass dum-dums.
They're the worst.
So I gotta go to Lava City. I need 4 knockdowns in Lava City. 3 knockdowns into Lava Fissure.
I still need one at the Fisher.
Yeah,
Lava
I need
Fisher.
one there as well.
Let's go to the Fisher then, if you need it.
And I need to scan 2 people as crypto. I think all my other people channel. Oh no, I still need to get 5 kills with Bloodhounds Beast mode. I thought I got those skins. I remember one time you guys were down and I figured I was going to go down because there's a whole squad. So I just hid and pulled my drone out to get the scans. I thought I actually got them, but maybe not. Shit.
We're doing
Yep.
ranked again?
What you see is not what you get. Time to win and stay alive.
You hear that? It's time to win and stay alive.
I can win this thing with one eye closed.
Oh shit, I've been trying to die and not lose. Fuck. I've been doing the straight up wrong thing.
Figured that.
Figured that.
The lava fisher, where is that?
This might be a good place to land, but what do I know?
Take us to the Fisher. The Fisher.
The Fisher. The Fisher.
Hallelujah. How about this way? That's lava over there.
That's lava over there. Yep.
That's lava over there.
Looks like lava over there. Yep.
I see lava over there.
These guys are deep.
There's Havoc here.
There's 2 armors in this building I'm in. Right here.
Blue or regular?
Regular. I said that when, or I was about to say it when you didn't have armor.
Yeah,
There's a 301 in here though.
Thank you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I gotta have it now. What are you doing, Opie?
You go.
Gotta hop up here. Choke.
Opie, stop chewing my chair.
Opie, stop showing my.
Oh yeah, I could use both of those actually. If Zero doesn't need one.
What'd you say?
Those mags that he
Oh, I
painted.
got flatline.
Said I could use both if Zero doesn't want them. It's a light mag and an energy
Yeah,
mag.
go for it. Go for it.
Another flatline here.
Oh shit. I got a spit.
If anybody else wants to be a straight up murderer.
Joe, if you want it, take
Nah,
it. If you
yeah,
don't,
no,
I'll
you're
take
good.
it.
I got
I'm gonna throw down a Spitfire for it if you want.
And there's a Prowler here. If somebody wants to use that with the select fire.
I'm gonna get the flat line.
I'll take the ammo that's with that Havoc. But there's 2 to 4s at the ass. I got one on both guns, and there's one down there. No regular sights.
No regulars.
I just dropped 20 heavy if anybody needs it.
Yeah, I need it. Thank you. 45 seconds for ring.
How do I get down? Where be the steps?
Could use that 2 to 4. 2 to 4.
Oh, steps
you
are
want to jump on this
inside.
thing?
Okay.
Steps are inside.
With the balloon, where is it? In the lava?
Yeah. There's lava over there.
I'll just run over there. 'Cause I'm kinda... That's lava. Ooh, he's smart.
Shut up, Opie. You just bitch and moan about everything.
I can see that the ring's moving on the map.
Oh, more energy ammo.
There's a 99 and a flat 99 and a Spitfire.
Oh, that's not enough for another.
Anybody sees an extended heavy mag, I could use it if you don't need it.
I got a blue stabilizer
Keep my eyes
and a
busy.
blue light mag. Does anybody need those?
No, good.
I just picked up a blue
Shank
light
it.
mag. Yeah, thanks.
Was this looted?
Alright, I'm dropping them then.
I didn't see.
Seen
Nope.
open bins and shit.
Oh, I don't know if I just opened that door or if it was already. Okay, yeah, it must have been.
Well, over
I
there,
did not
you
open
do
that one.
though, right?
Yeah, no. Oh yeah, this is.
Let's get in
pretty
before
clean.
we're like dying in the storm now.
Yeah. Okay.
That fucks us up. Just go straight through there.
Okay.
Alright, you're way ahead of us.
You're ahead of us.
Grim, was that a decoy you threw off to your left?
Yes.
Okay.
Alright, I got my EMP ready.
I'm gonna go there and just crash in and see if there's anybody to fight.
Well, that's not a good plan.
Shite.
Alright, let's start hunting people
I
down.
thought that's what we were doing.
It's definitely. Well, yeah.
I don't know, send him a drone out to go find somebody.
Why do I not have a backpack yet?
Backpack?
You don't have any backpack?
No backpack.
Care package just came in. I don't know if that was fine or not. Can't see it. I don't see a light anymore. It's over there by the train station somewhere.
Over there by the train.
I'm not seeing the backpacks, yo.
Yeah, me neither. I'm on the next floor up.
There you go. Here's a white one.
Oh, thank you.
Backing out of my drone. I'm good to go.
I'm hearing something in that direction. You want to push over there?
All right. Okay.
Yeah, I'm seeing some bullets. Hold on, I saw a med kit in this building. I want to go grab real quick.
Maybe that building, I
Shit
think.
cells.
All right. Right behind you. Right behind you.
Very close.
One of these.
Over there.
Yeah, I think it is.
One just zipped over to the building, the top of where you're at, Zero.
Okay.
I'm climbing these steps over here.
Only 30 seconds left on the clock. The ring's close.
That was me that zipped up, Grim.
What, that went over this zip line here?
Oh, no. But I didn't see
Nothing
that
yet.
now, though.
Yeah.
I thought
yeah,
you
I
meant
saw.
me zipping up to the balcony.
So, so they probably, so this goes to a zip line, so they probably just also zip there.
They're
but we
going
have to
this
go
way
this
then?
direction for the storm.
Okay.
Well, they're right there. I see somebody actually right there.
Okay.
Well, we need to get into the storm, so we should probably do that first, I guess.
He's kind of chasing us. He's kind of getting fucked.
Somebody's here.
Okay.
Yep, there's two
I
of them.
broke
right
this
there.
one's shield. I
The
broke
lifeline's on those
shield.
dead.
Watson's down. Someone just got burned.
There's another squad here. We should let them
Yeah,
fight
it's multi-squads.
and just stay
Yeah.
alive.
Oh shit, I'm trying to get Zero. Fuck.
I'm backing out. Shit.
Fuck, man.
I'm gonna take a smoke break.
Yeah, I'm
I'll be
done.
back in a little bit.
So, it was fun.
Yeah.
Adios. I'll be on tomorrow.
Yeah, good games. Good games.
Yeah, man.
I'll probably play a couple more with you, Graham. I guess I'll just
Alright.
hang out a bit.
Alright,
Hope
you
you
can
have a
play a game
good
in
day
the
at work.
meantime if you want.
Joe, we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Good
Alright,
night,
yeah, sounds
man.
good. I'll back out.
Adios.
Alright, have a good day.
Adios.
wherever you
Opie,
go.
get the fuck off me. Alright, see.
Nah.
Between this dog and that game, super frustrated. I don't know. I don't know, it just seemed like they weren't hearing me that last game. I don't know. Yep. I didn't realize my face cam wasn't on the whole time. But yeah, it was like they weren't hearing me. I don't know if my mic was too far from my mouth or something, but they just like weren't acknowledging what I was saying. And then just like still doing, I don't know. Like right there at the end there, like I said I was behind. I saw something I went to go grab. And they're like 5 blocks ahead of me. I was already frustrated anyway. This dog really has been driving me nuts lately. Doesn't matter how much energy we how many times we walk him, what kind of games we try to play with him. Like, there's times where like he'll always walk, but there's times where like he doesn't want to play fetch, or he doesn't want to play tug, or he doesn't want to do anything, and then he has all this energy and he's just a terrorist. Like, he's probably gonna have a crazy amount of energy. He's gonna be like chewing the wall. He's chewing the wall. He's literally down to a stud in the guest room. He does it while we sleep, and like somebody sleeps with him. So like, me and Kim have been sleeping in separate beds. One of us sleeps with Chibs in our bed. The other sleeps with Opie in the guest room, in the old stream room, the blue room. Lately it's been Kim, because I work. She's off for a bunch of days till the end of the year. She had like 20 PTO days, so she's off a bunch. So she's been staying with him because doesn't sleep well. Doesn't matter. She doesn't work. But yeah, so like he's chewing everything. He's chewing like the trim to the closet door, the wall. He's literally chewing the drywall to the stud. So he's sprayed like cayenne pepper that was diluted. First it was too diluted, and then made a new batch. But like my hands are all dry and cracked, so like the spray bottle wasn't working right, so it's like leaking all down my hands, like in my cracks and cuts, and just all over. He's driving me freaking bonkers. Anyway, rant is over. I want to say thank you. Thank you. You right there, all he is. Bam. All he is for coming out, whoever it is. I don't know. Those who talk, I appreciate it. I can thank you personally. Those who don't talk, I don't know who you are. And it is what it is. But yeah, thank you for coming out, whether it was Facebook, Twitch, Mixer, YouTube, whether you stayed for a minute or an hour. Tyra was in first time for a while. She's been in. I appreciate that. Mike Ingram, I don't know if you've ever been in, but I appreciate you stopping by tonight. It means a lot to me, that even if it's just curiosity, I see it, I'm gonna hop in, whatever, see what he's doing. I haven't seen him since high school. Whatever, you stop by, you spend a little bit of time, and I appreciate it. Just a heads up, if you stop in on Facebook, it tells me your name. You see it when you get in, and then you're surprised. Most people are, and then they back out. So I try to greet you immediately, so it's like, oh, hey, what's up? And then hopefully to then leave after that would be weird, so you stay and chat for a little bit. It's not weird that you're here. I want everybody to come, hang out, whether I know you or not. But yeah, so thanks to Tara, thanks to Mike Ingram, thanks to Teddy, Mr. Alavine. I appreciate it. You've been in before plenty of times. You stop in, actually play some games with us. I see you play Minecraft. We got to get together on some Minecraft as well. Thanks to Zeddy, I think, stopped in the Mixer chat. I don't know. But yeah, Zeddy's in a lot. So thanks to everybody. I appreciate it. I really do. I'll be back on tomorrow, like 10 o'clock. You can follow me on my socials. It's Mechanic on all socials except Twitter. It's Mechanic G. I don't really use Twitter that much, but I appreciate all the engagement I get on the Instagram and on the Facebook, on the Facebook and the Instagram. Also follow Zero Logic Gaming on Facebook and Instagram as well. Logic with a K. I don't know if I've ever said that. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, merchandise. Working on more merchandise. I have the ZLG.ZG shirt is just about ready to go to print. As soon as I get some okays from people for prices. I have the prices worked out. It's going to be about $12 a shirt. And if that's not enough to pay my buddy, if he wants more, then I'll just pay him out of pocket. Whatever. Maybe about $12 a shirt plus shipping, so I gotta get some addresses. If you want it, get at me as soon as you can, because once we go to print, once it's done, because then I have to remake the screen to do another one. So we'd have to get a whole round of people together again and do it again and split it or whatever. I might also put it up on Redbubble afterwards. I don't know. But let me know if you're interested. More merchandise coming. I'm working on some designs. But yeah, thank you for coming out. And to those who didn't come out,